Welcome back to the Young Professionals video blog, sponsored by Dale Carnegie Training and Dixon Schwabel. Our guest today is a genuine hero, with 31 years of distinguished service to our nation in the United States Army. From his graduation at West Point, as his second lieutenant, he became a company commander. When he retired in November 2005, he was a commanding general of the 1st Infantry Division, better known as the Big Red One, serving combat duty in north central Iraq. John and his wife, Michelle, have been married for 34 years, with a legacy of 5 wonderful children. He is now the president of locally owned Klein Steel. Please welcome General John Batiste. John, looking at recent case studies, they show one of the #1 things that is needed in business and with young professionals is ethical leadership. Yet, ethical leadership doesn't seem to be focused on at all.
Business schools today, by and large, don't spend a lot of time on leadership, and certainly not ethics, and they should. I'm on the board of the Johns Hopkins Carey School of Business, and I can tell you that there's a school who's working to fix that and generate in their graduates a sense for leadership and what it takes to be successful and why ethics is so important. You know, in our past history, just going back 10 years, there's any number of examples where business leaders have failed us all. And I think that that's a big problem in our country today, is that we don't have sufficient leaders who understand not only leadership, but how important ethics and integrity is. This idea that you're a servant leader, that you're working for your teammates day in and day out, and every decision you make is important, and whether or not one walks the talk with values is important. Because as a leader, people are watching you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on and off the job. And if you're not walking the talk with values, and integrity is certainly one of them, then your entire organization's fabric is undermined. The foundation begins to crumble. And as a consequence, you get what you get. But back to your question. My journey started back in the summer of 1970 at West Point when I was a plebe. And I would characterize what I know about leadership today as a journey, a long journey of 41 years, 36 of them in uniform, and now 5 of them in private business. And what I've discovered is that the same principles that I learned and developed as an officer in the United States Army are setting me personally up for success in Rochester, New York. It is about integrity, and you're right, in the summer of 2005, spring of 2006, I took a stand.
Yes, you did.
That was very difficult to make. It was gut-wrenching for me to turn down promotion and step out of the Army so I could speak out about what we were doing then and now in both Afghanistan and Iraq. So, yeah, tough decision. But you know what? The truth will set you free, and at the end of the day, you have to look at the guy in the mirror, and that's you, and say, well done. You know, you did the right thing. So in my case, that was certainly so.
You did the right thing. And recently, we've seen all kinds of cases of leaders not doing the right thing. What do you feel we have to be able to do to really start turning this around?
Well, to the extent that many of these people are elected by you and I to go serve us in Albany or Washington or whatever, we as voters can vote them out. And there's no shortage of examples in Western New York lately of how our elected officials have gone on to embarrass us in major ways. So part of the answer is us. We have to do a better job of vetting the people that we vote for. I think everybody, all of us, you and I, have an obligation in a free society to be well informed, to study the issues. You know, you start with the internet, there's all kinds of things to read, you talk to people. That's an obligation we have. In addition to voting, which is a responsibility that we must do, you know, to be involved, to figure out what's going on so you can separate the wheat from the chaff. difficult sometimes to tell the difference. But I do know from the perspective of a guy who stood up and said, no, this is wrong, you know, you're driven by passion. You're driven by doing the harder right rather than the easier wrong. You know, it's doing the right thing when no one's looking.
What do you feel is the difference between leading in the military to leading in private business?
Yeah, great question. Let's focus that question on what's the difference between the United States Army and small to medium-sized businesses. And Klein Steel would be in that category. In the military, there's a huge institutional training base. In other words, there's a whole lot of effort and resources thrown at training and mentoring and developing leaders over time. So in addition to the 4 years at West Point, and a good part of that was studying leadership, once you are commissioned and you start serving in the Army, every 4 or 5 years or so, you're sent back to a whole year's worth of school to study tactics and operational art and leadership and values. And so I did that as a lieutenant, as a captain, as a major, as a colonel. So a significant portion of my active duty experience, years worth, were in a classroom, reading and debating and thinking about things. But most importantly, in between those classroom experiences, I was able to go out in this wonderful leadership laboratory and practice and figure out what works for me. Leadership can't be taught. It's a developed process. And some people never figure it out. They don't connect the dots. Leadership is something that you work on over an extended period of time and develop who you are. In my own case, I started life as a young lieutenant right out of West Point in 1974. The Army in those days coming out of Vietnam was essentially broken. There were very few non-commissioned officers that I could depend on because they were all gone. They were either dead or they'd already left the Army. So as a consequence in those days, as a young leader, I was very centralized and did things myself. I didn't trust anybody. And that works in a small organization, I suppose. But the real organization that's firing on all cylinders is one where the leader decentralizes and empowers all of his or her teammates to do what they do best. Give them the resources and get out of the way. And so over time, as I developed and took command of larger and larger and larger organizations, I realized through trial and error that there was a better way to do it, and that the best organizations, either in the Army or in business, are those where the leader trusts his or her people, and there's a high degree of decentralization and empowerment, which implies that you have to have a strategy. You have to set the azimuth with mission, vision, values, culture to ensure that your team understands where you're going and the what and the how and the why. But once you get that established, boy, you can do some incredible things. Klein Steel is, you know, an organization of 206 teammates right now, much smaller than that brigade of 5,000 troops, but no less complex. And to decentralize and empower everybody on that team and keep them all focused, heading in the same direction, is terribly important. The challenge is to recruit and attract people with the same values into your organization. Some people are not hardwired the way you want them to be, so don't hire them. Don't let them get onto your team because they'll infest it. But you go after the right people with the right values, and then you can develop a team member-centric organization, you know, decentralization, empowerment, you know, the kind of organization where people want to get up in the morning and go to work, as opposed to the normal kind of an organization where leadership is not necessarily...
No, not Monday.
No, not Monday. I don't want to go back to that mess. But sadly, that's what so many people are going back to. And you know what? We need to train leaders, not only in business, but also in government, that do the right thing, that bring out the best of their organizations.
When you're not leading these great companies that you're leading now, and you're not taking a stand, what is John Batiste doing for fun?
I'm so, well, number one is this is a great place to live. Rochester is a wonderful city, a wonderful community to raise a family, and we still have a son who's a junior at Brighton High School. 4 other kids that are out, very successful doing what they do. But we have fun with lots of outdoor activities. We love to walk on the Erie Canal, my wife and I. Show us a trail anywhere in the Finger Lakes or in the Adirondacks. We're all over it. That's what we like to do, being together.
That's fantastic. So what other advice would you give young professionals out there that are viewing this blog?
Viewing this blog. Number one is do a lot of reading. Read current events. Read business books. Read for pleasure, you know, other books that aren't necessarily focused on a specific discipline. But I would recommend reading, you know, inform, learn, discuss. Surround yourself with good people. Birds of a feather flock together.
Yes, they do.
And more often than not, when I see a person who's gone in the wrong direction, it's because their associations are the wrong kind of people. So be discerning. Figure out the right group and surround yourself with those people, because they'll support you in life, and they'll help you to get better. Find a mentor. Find a business person somewhere, and it may not be in your current business. There may be no qualified mentors in your current business, but find a mentor somewhere. And I think that's an important aspect of what you guys are doing, to connect young business people, young folks fresh out of college, with somebody that can help them along the way, you know, to help them make good choices and set a good example for them so they continue to get better. Set your sights high. Don't be satisfied with what you're doing today. Today's merely a stepping stone to what you're going to be doing 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So think big.
Thank you, John. And thank you for viewing. Our next guest is the CEO of the Rochester Area Community Foundation, Jennifer Leonard. And again, a special thanks to Dixon Schwabel for providing all of the video production and the Democrat and Chronicle for hosting this on their website. Thank you again, and make it a great day.